Cyberpsychosis is a mental disease where an individual's personality fragments and they begin to relate more to machines than to humans. Soon they start ignoring people, while standard activities such as eating or sleeping become less relevant to them. Ultimately, this process continues until the person reaches a point where having any form of interaction with humans begins to irritate them to such an extent that it culminates in a rage that consumes them entirely. The origins of cyberpsychosis can be traced back to the psychiatric disorder, psychosis. Psychosis represents a condition where a person perceives or interprets reality in a substantially different way from those around them, usually manifesting itself in the form of hallucinations or delusions. In contrast, cyberpsychosis encompasses a wider range of symptoms, including compulsive lying, kleptomania, sadism, brutality, split personality, and violent mood swings. Limited information is available on the efficacy of cyberpsychosis treatment modalities. Rehabilitation options include brain dance, drugs, hypnotic psychosurgery, and aversion therapy, which aim to restore the damaged personality of the patient. Cyberware is removed and deactivated. Many of the symptoms of cyberpsychosis are not unique to the condition, so misdiagnosis or false positive tests are a factor. Furthermore, the diagnostic criteria used for psychiatric conditions tends to be based upon North American and European traditions of medicine, and often fail to consider the differences in cultural norms from other parts of the world. While Night City is a free state based in Northern California, the cultures represented in its districts are myriad. The abundance of mental health problems found in Night City may be correlated with the significant social inequality amongst its populace. This raises pertinent questions about the origins of cyberpsychosis. Are people suffering from mental illness more likely to acquire cyberware in the first place? Or is it the cyberware that causes the pathological symptoms? Medical professionals view cyberpsychosis as a dissociate disorder which occurs when someone with pre-existing psychopathic tendencies enhances themselves via cyberware to the point that they no longer see other individuals as sapient organisms, but simply a collection of replaceable parts.
Rage! Fury! Carnage! Rude! Follow your instincts!
Good evening, Night City! Joining us tonight is a doctor specializing in psychiatry and cybernetics. Spoiler alert, he's a smart guy. Please welcome Ivan Guerrero!
I'm truly flattered, Mr. Q. Greetings to all in Night City.
Am I right in saying you're a cyberpsychosis therapist?
That's correct.
So how are things in the Mac stack?
Good one, Mr. Q. I actually work in the Oak Ridge Hospital.
Well, you sure are a funny guy, Ivan. Let's go back to basics, shall we? Just what is cyberpsychosis?
It's a spectrum of psychological disorders caused by cybernetic implantation.
But look, I've got 7 implants myself, and I haven't completely lost my mind, though my ex-wife would probably disagree.
Everyone has their own breaking point. Some patients get symptoms after their first implant. Others remain in perfect psychological health even after what we call a full-body conversion.
Fascinating. So tell us, Doc, what causes cyberpsychosis?
Well, it depends on a lot of things, but the most vulnerable are undoubtedly those who display antisocial tendencies.
What if implants aren't the real problem? I mean, sooner or later, wouldn't those kinds of people snap by themselves?
Interesting question, Mr. Q. In all fairness, there are prominent voices in the scientific community who claim we're confusing correlation with cause and effect. Some go even further and say that cyberpsychotic attacks are a manifestation of societal degradation, like mass shootings once were. Only difference now is that people don't just have a gun. They've got implants to murder others.
And what's your personal opinion, Ivan?
I'd start by saying that there's an indisputable connection between cybernetification and psychological disorders. We've seen this with rats. When we replace 1/3 of their body with cybernetic equivalents, they become 5 times more likely to display psychotic tendencies than the control group.
Sheesh! Well, I just hope I don't meet any of those cyber rats on the subway.
But, and I can't stress this enough, disorders are a product of one's cultural surroundings. They don't necessarily lead to violence.
Well, now wait a sec. You're saying that cyberpsychos are violent because...
Because our society is obsessed with violence. You could even say we glorify it.
Fascinating. Now, Ivan, let's say I've got a few implants and I'm worried I'm starting to feel some symptoms. What should I do?
Well, the good news is that a treatment exists, and so far it's effective. We call it brain dance neuro reintegration. Over a few dozen sessions, we subject a patient's cortical nodes to intense stimuli, recovering positive attributes like obedience, docility, sociability, and of course...
Just say it, Doc. You're giving them shock therapy.
I beg your pardon? That's not what I said. You're putting words in my mouth.
Is that so? Well, our next guest, Joyce Wright, wants to give you a piece of her mind, about this so-called therapy. We're about to get mental, folks, right after this short break.
All right, listen up, people. I've got a public service announcement. It's about the scourge of our age, that chrome nightmare that you know as cyberpsychosis. It seems we can't go a day without some boosted lunatic tearing through a crowd of bystanders. The story you've always heard is that it's a psychological condition, a kind of disassociative violence. But is there more to it? What if cyberpsychosis is intentional? I once heard a theory that I think merits some thought. An old friend of mine used to say that he thought the biggest manufacturers had got together a long time ago and agreed on a baseline failure rate for certain devices. Bad code intentionally inserted into the mind-machine interfaces to slowly drive people up the wall, a kind of human planned obsolescence. They figure, what's the best defense against a nut job with a 23-inch telescoping blade in his forearm? A 26-inch telescoping blade in yours. I can't say he's not onto something. Every time some psycho tears his way through a mall, sales of combat cyberware spike. Every time Net54 News runs a story on a massacre, some Arasaka exec buys himself a new yacht. Can that be all, though? It's no secret that incidents of violent cyberpsychosis have skyrocketed in recent decades, despite improvements in manufacturing and design. But there is something new in the latest generation cyberware. Get ready for this, kids. It's the Blackwall. If you aren't a runner yourself, or a code jockey, you might not know, but the Blackwall isn't some mystical barrier floating somewhere in the deep net. It's actually a complex hardware-software infrastructure designed to keep AIs from accessing your gear, among other things. Maybe it doesn't work as well as NetWatch says. Maybe the madness of the deep net leaks over to our side from the Blackwall from time to time. Drive some poor chumbo right over the edge. And it's possible it doesn't really exist anyway. Maybe it's just something the media came up with. Look, I'm not saying there aren't attacks. I've seen a few myself. What I am saying is there's a million reasons why one human might want to butcher another. Hell, we've been doing it for millions of years, even without cyberware. But let me tell you, listeners, with cyberware, it's easier than ever. And on the other side, maybe the corporate and media types just came up with a word, so they wouldn't have to think too hard about it. And you wouldn't either. Of course, this is all speculation. If I knew what caused cyberpsychosis, believe me, I'd tell you.